canines, and then we incisor. So in other words, we don't retract canine and incisor together. We go first canine and second incisor. Now, I want to open up a little parenthesis on that. That was very good. Remember to put your phone on mute. If you check the literature, there is no evidence that if you retract canines and then you retract incisor, you do better. Actually, the only difference that you are probably a treatment that is a little bit longer. Why I prefer to retract canine and first and incisor later instead of retracting canine and incisor together? For one reason, because I want everything to be under control. I want you not to lose your reference point. Second, I want something that is absolutely repeatable. So if we move the canine, we know exactly that the canine more or less is moving 1 millimeter per day. Then we have our reference point, which is the molar
Per
class
day or
and
per
everything
month?
else. Huh?
Per day or per month?
Per month, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Per day is a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna do it. Retract canine first and incisor later. Is that evidence-based? No. Evidence-based says that you can do both things, but if you do it all together in a mass retraction, you are doing faster. Okay? Fine. In any case, I like to do first canine, then incisor. Now, the concept is always the same. We have two different kinds of brackets. We have 18 by 25 on the incisor and 22 by 28 on canine, premolar, and molars. So if you have a wire that is 18 by 22, you fill the slot on the incisors, and you don't fill the slot on all the other teeth. I hope this is, at this point, is clear. So the type of situation that we have, when we, in this case, we extract the upper premolar, we first bring in the canine, and we maintain all our reference point. Then, once the canine is in the correct position, we retract the incisors. Okay, once the canine is in the correct position, not yet, but more or less, we retract the incisors. Okay?
All together.
Now, one by one. Okay. I'm sorry, Matteo, but yes, all together. Now, make sure that when we work, we always want to make 3 groups of teeth. One group is the canine back, the other group is the incisor. We move the incisor all together. Okay? Now, when we move the incisor, of course, the big challenge is to maintain the torque. In order to maintain the torque, what we do is we fill the slot, we give some torque more, because I already told you the difference between engagement angle and clinically efficient torque. And then we use that's something 5 to 10, 10, 15, depending. I always do 10 degrees, and if it's too much, I decrease. If it's not enough, I increase. There is no way that you can tell before how much is the correct torque for a patient, because torque depends on the length of the root, on the type of the bone, on the type of the inclination. So you know that there is a center of resistance, there is a point of application of the force, we're going to create a harm, and then depends how much bone there is. So it's very difficult.
Almost.
I go 10. I go 10. Don't forget that we already have some torque inserted in the brackets. 12 degrees and 10 degrees, if I recall well. So it's a little bit more. So in other words, what we are doing, we are putting torque plus we have some prescription. Now, one more thing to say. Not all the wire are the same. So I want you in your mind to understand, put in your mind that when somebody is telling you, I'm using a 19 by 25, he's telling you only the dimension of the wire. He's not telling you what type of wire is using. Because depending on the temperature of the wire, you have a different type of quality. So make sure that if you have LG Loy blue, 19 by 25 is completely different on using super tempered 19 by 25. So I want you to use your critical judgment. When somebody is telling you, I'm using 18 by 22, the question is yes. And what type of 1822? Now, we are using, as I told you yesterday, and I keep telling you every single time, there is no way that you can finish a case without bending the wire. So, in order to produce this type of result, you have to bend the wire. And don't forget, we have prescription on the brackets, but that are not enough. That are, going in some good direction, but it's not enough. Because each case is different, and you have to adapt to each case. Let's see what we are doing. Now, we are retracting the incisor, okay? What you do, in order to retract the incisor, you are using a force, class 1 force, intra-arch force that goes from the first molar to the hook in the wires. Okay? So, the first thing that you have to realize is that you are not applying the force on the center of resistance of the tooth. So, you create what we call a arm. So, if you have an arm, you also have a moment. And this moment tends to rotate the molar this way. Why I'm telling you that? Because you know that before. You know that before. So the most, in my opinion, what you should not do is put a straight wire here. Because if you put a straight wire here, you allowed all these forces that are working against you to get to the tooth. So you know that you have this type of forces working on the teeth. So the first thing that you have to do, since you are going undersized here, you don't forget that this cube is a 22 by 28. And the wire that you are using is a 18 by 22. So what you have to do immediately, you have to compensate. So if you compensate with a gentle toe-in, you create a couple of forces that that is working against the moment. Okay? Is that clear? Now, unfortunately, when we work in a patient, we work on something that is tridimensional, not bidimensional. So we don't have only to see this on the occlusal plane. We have to see this also in the vertical plane.
Can you come back, please?
You have to take a picture.
Yeah.
Ma si potrebbe chiudere la tenda di là?
Perché? Non ci vedi bene?
No, perché vengo male le foto.
Vai avanti tu.
Sì, vero.
I'm going to give you everything. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You're going to have almost everything. Okay?
Grazie.
So, again,
Eccolo qua.
remember to compensate for this moment that you create, and you don't before that you are creating this moment. It's not something unexpected. It's something that you know before. Okay? So, why is it impossible to rely only on prescription, in my opinion? You don't know how much is the force of this moment. Nobody knew. And so you have to compensate, and if that is not enough, you have to compensate more. Every single time you see the patient, you have to check your reference point. Same thing. On the vertical plane, you have more or less the center of resistance of the molar that is there. And the class 1 force that goes from the molar to the hook in the wire. Now, of course, you create the arm. This arm is create a moment. This type of moment. So in other words, this dude tried to go this way. And you know it before. You know it before. It's not unexpected. You know it before. So if you are using a straight wire, undersized, it's very possible that you're going to have something like that. So what you have to do, you compensate. You have a gentle and a gentle curve of P on the back. What is this doing? It's creating a couple that is working against the force that is bringing the motor forward. So you always create a couple that play against the moment. Is this enough? We don't know. We cannot calculate how much is this. It's very difficult to calculate. So you have always to check your reference point. And the reference point, as we see in this case, you know, this is, of course, a non-extraction case, we go class 3. And if we see that we are losing, we are going toward class 1, what we're going to do, we are resetting our anchorage. There is no way that you can control a case from the beginning to the end as you plan. There are too many variables. You cannot control all the variables. That is the reason why you have to check the case every month, every 3-4 weeks. Otherwise, there will not. Otherwise, why are you allowing the person to come back to your office? If everything would work, just send back in 6 months and change the mechanic.
Excuse me.
Yep.
And the increasement of the carbo speed, where does it start? From the premolar or premolar?
You usually do it in here,
Okay.
in the last
feet.
third.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, we're going to have the same problem on the incisor. More or less, the center of resistance of the incisor is here. And you know, I try to be scientific, but when a person like me say more or less, is the most annoying term that I can use, more or less. That means that I'm not sure. I don't know what it is. Nobody knows it. But more or less means that we don't know what it is. We know that more or less is in this area. So if you don't even know what is the center of resistance, how can you calculate the force? So more or less the center of resistance is there. So we are using again a force to retract the incisor. And guess what? You create the arm. And guess what? If you create the arm, you create a moment. So what is going to happen is exactly this. And you know that before. You know that before. That is the reason why people that are using straight wire are using they keep increasing the prescription of the incisors. Because this moment is very difficult to counteract. And so you get here, if the incisor goes this way, you're going to maintain, you cannot close completely the space, you're going to have a space here, and you go bananas. So what you have to do is control the torque of the incisor. In class 2s, is the most difficult thing to do is controlling the torque of the incisors. How do we do it? First of all, we fill the slot. Second, we put torque on the wire. And guess what? If you put torque in the wire, you create a couple that is working against the moment. Again, you have to check every single appointment what is going to happen. And if you are losing torque, you stop the retraction. You increase the torque of the wire and you ligate from here to there. It's clear. You lose the torque, you see that? You are losing the torque.
You close the overcharge.
What you do, you discontinue the force, you ligate from here to there, and you increase the torque on the incisors.
To where, sorry? The ligature.
The ligature goes instead of the traction, exactly the same thing.
Okay.
If you want, you can even cinch back, but we prefer to do that. Now, another thing that is very important,
Why make a cinch?
you don't make it, forget it. Just use a ligature, okay? You don't make a cinch. You know, the reason is to not allow this wire to go out, because every single time you increase the torque, the teeth, the incisor tends to go this way.
Okay.
You don't want that. You want to do the root to go back. In order the root to go back, you have to not allow the wire
Okay.
to go out. Okay?
Also, if we have
What is-
the elastic chain,
Forget the elastic chain. If you put the elastic chain, you are increasing this moment. You don't want to increase the moment. You want to increase the couple.
A couple the door. Yes.
Think about it.
Yes.
The force is giving this couple.
Yeah.
If you increase the force, you increase this couple. You see that you lose the torque, you don't want to increase the couple. You stop for a second, you discontinue for a visit the retraction force,
Okay.
and you increase the torque. So you stop the couple
and so,
and you increase the,
so
okay?
that
You
moment,
stop the moment and you increase the couple.
and so in this moment,
But
you are
at this
go.
point, you have to pay attention, because if you do something like that, this is the reaction.
Yes, okay.
You don't want that.
Understand.
So
Understand.
you ligate back,
Yes.
and you, of
Okay.
course, you increase the anchorage, because you want something like this to happen.
Understand. Okay.
Fine. Is that clear?
I lost.
Another very important part is the wire that we are using. Because the torque is different depending on the type of the wire. The type of wire that we are using is SG. We call SG. SG means super gold. When you temper a wire, the wire tends to get a goldish color. Okay? So, Gianelli, at that time, didn't like the temper of the wire that was around. So he asked GAC to increase the torque. GAC went to Tommy and said, we want a wire with more torque. So what happened, they produced only for bidimensional technique a wire that's called SG. Means super gold. Was gold? No, more tempered. So if you have a wire that is very tempered, that means that when you bend the wire, you have to pay attention, because you can break it easily. But what is going to happen is that if you make it something is going to stay. The more the wire is tempered, the more what you do is going to stay. So in other words, if you make a torque here in a super gold wire that is very tempered, when you put it back, so you have torque here, you are putting back, this torque is not lost. So you still have a couple working for long. Is that clear? Fine. So make sure that you understand that every single time you apply a force out of the center of resistance, what is going to happen? You create an arm, and then you create a moment. Every single time there is a moment, you have to counteract. If you don't like it, of course. If it's against what you are doing. There is a moment, you have to counteract the moment. How do I counteract the moment? How do we counteract the moment? We create a couple of forces. This is a case that you probably have seen yesterday, because
That's
I have only 10 cases to show, and I always share the same. But that is exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this: we were retracting the incisor, we were keeping the torque. So that is exactly what we want. When you go in the mouth, you check the arch form. That after checking the arch form, you do a small tway in the back, 10-15 degrees. Then you make a torque on the wire, and you take that back here because you want the wire sliding, and then you do the curve of stay. When you go in the mouth, you insert the wire, and when you insert the wire, since the wire is filling the slot, you are almost sure that you are not losing too much torque. And here, again, you know that the wire is undersized, so the wire can slide. Okay? If you do something like that, and then you put a force, you can retract the inside. Of course, you need some anchorage, and you can retract the inside. And you see that this is coming forward because we like to have 2 millimeters of super class. What Dr. Gianelli was saying is a super class 1. It's not a super class 1, it's a class 3. Okay? We put when we distalize in non-extraction treatment, we distalize, we don't stop in class 1, we stop in class 3. Why? Because we have space in the bank, we have money in the bank, space in the bank, in the bank. If we are in class 3 and we lose anchorage, we immediately see, and if the case is under control, we immediately see that we are losing, and we can do something in the very next visit. Okay? If this is closing, I know that my reference point is telling me that the patient is not wearing the elastics. The patient is not doing what she's supposed to do. Something in the system is not working, but I know it immediately.
Is necessary to distalize in super class 1 also if we use TALS?
You know, if you use TALS, you can even do something different. But for me, I am old-fashioned. I like to have the belt and the suspender. So I prefer to have some money in the bank, on the back. So I prefer to have some space in the bank. That's, you know, you can work it. For me, if I go 1-2 millimeters, it's not a big deal. It takes 1 month, 1.5 months, not big deal for me. But if you want to do something different, it's up to you. You know, you're a professional. You know what you're talking about. With TALS, is a little bit different. But if I have to give you a suggestion, try always to be on the safe side. But that is my personal opinion.
Excuse me,
Now-
Tom. So we just seen how to retract incisors. But at first we retract canine.
Yeah.
The procedure is the same?
No, we're gonna see that. The reason why I always start from incisor is because the incisor are much more didactic, because you have 2 units that work one against the other. So we're gonna do also the canine retraction, but canine retraction is for the same thing like premolar retraction. It's a little bit different, and you have to have a stop on the molar, and it's a complete. Let's concentrate on the incisor, because for me it's much more didactic. So what you want to maintain the incisor there. And here, we lost a little bit of torque, but we probably put the incisor in the correct position on this bone. Moreover, what is quite important is that the lower arch was we were using class 2 elastics. Now, the same thing works on controlling the lower incisors. If you fill the slot, Too much vodka even. Too much vodka yesterday.
Non è abituato.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Even I need howling to say.
Even I know I know your feeling. That is called hangover. I know it very well. Don't worry about it. No,
Vodka.
you know, you have to drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Or a shot of vodka.
Now, what is important? Now, what is important? I apologize, but you know, sometimes it's nice to take out the extension. But what is really important? We were using the lower arch as anchor of class 2 elastics that are keeping the anchorage in the upper arch. So what is important to see is that if you fill the slot and you put the correct torque on the incisor, you can control the incisor too, the lower incisor too. Because we're going to discuss that, we're going to see that, you know, there are two difficult things in our profession in class 2s. One is the control of the upper incisor torque when you retract it. The second one is the control of the lower incisor when you use the lower arch as an anchorage. You're still alive. Now, this is a paper that I suggest you to read. It is, I think, from the University of Washington at Seattle, and they were checking the different capability of torque and with different wire. The final results is that design of bracket doesn't do anything to torque. The parameters that you have to remember is something that nobody tells you. Wire type. Nobody in orthodontics is talking about wire types. They always tell you 18 by 22, 19 by 25. Then another important thing is the bracket width. Smaller the bracket, less you control the torque. Then is important the distance between one bracket to the other. Of course, wire slot plate. And I want you to always have in your mind that wire slot plate, nobody's telling you about wire slot plate. You know, the impression, and I want you to use your critical judgment, and I want you to have in your mind, when somebody tells you that they have a prescription, such and such prescription, that infer that the prescription is read and the prescription is immediately translated to the tooth, which is not true. The prescription is not read if you go undersized and is not translated to the tooth. So that is the reason why I laugh when people tell me that they have invented a new technique and they are doing some change of torque of 3 degrees. 3 degrees of torque doesn't mean anything. And I want you to concentrate on the wire type. So don't get the information that only 19 by 25 doesn't mean anything. 19 by 25 doesn't mean anything. 19 by 25 means the size of the wire. Now tell me what type of wire. You know, there are so many different types of stainless steel that it should tell me. You know, you can get a lot of Chinese wires, and you don't know what is inside. There's a different composition. There is a different composition of stainless steel. There is a different temperature of stainless steel, and you should know. Unfortunately, nobody knows. In the world, there are 4, probably 5 companies that make wire. All the companies buy wire by the same. And then they label it.
Oh. Fantastic.
They're not more than that. So it should be quite easy to understand what type of wire you're using. But please make sure that you buy a wire for a major company. That is the only thing that I can tell you. Make sure that you buy a wire for the major company. Because usually the wires that are sold, like Nite-Tie or this type of wires, that are very low price, are getting from Chinese industries, and you don't know what they put inside. You don't know what you put in the mouth of your patient. You can make $1 or $2 or €1 or €2 discount. You save a few euros, and you don't know what you put in the mouth of your patient. So do whatever you like, but treat your patient as it was your child. So make sure that you get something that is at least coming from a major company. Not because the major company are the best, they are not. But usually they have such a reputation they cannot go and buy something that is strange. Okay? Now, let's go for Class 2 elastic anchorage. So, the most difficult thing are these three to do. And we're gonna see all of them, and then we're gonna bend the wire in order to produce this. Now, Matteo, you asked me about vertical on Class 2 elastics, or who was asking me? Somebody was asking me about vertical. Now, when you use a Class 2 elastic, like in this case, you were. Okay. When you use a Class 2 elastic, like in this case, what is going to happen is that you have if you compound this force in vectors, you have a vertical and a horizontal vector. What is annoying us are both vectors, because they are all against on what we are doing, what we want. We don't want this to extrude, and we don't want the incisor to go forward. See, yes?
So, but here, why we use the Class 2 elastic in the upper
We are using Class 2 elastics as anchorage.
as anchorage for
When we retract, we are using Class 2
to
elastic. Okay,
add the force to retract the.
we don't add any force. We don't add any force. Now, again, let's talk about efficiency. Efficiency means that if you use a force that you want to move something, use a force that is trying to move. So, as a force that moves something, we use intra-arch force,
Okay.
Class 1 forces.
Okay.
So, we don't have vectors that are vertical. In bidimensional technique,
Yeah.
in order to be effective, efficient, we use to move the intra-arch force. To make the teeth stay, to anchor teeth, we use inter-arch forces. Inter-arch forces are used to maintain. So we don't want these three teeth to go forward,
Okay.
so we put the Class 2 elastics. We use this as all the arch as anchorage.
Okay.
Okay? But using this all arch as anchorage, we know, and everybody knows from beginning, that there are forces that we like this force here, right? Of Class 2 elastic. We don't like this force here, we don't like this force here, we don't like this force here. So, out of the 4 vectors that the Class 2 produce, we like 1, we don't like 3. So we have to develop a biomechanics system in order to counteract these forces, because we don't like them. When we use Class 2 elastics, and this is not me, this is Tweed, when we use Class 2 elastics, this is going to happen to the occlusal plate, right? So this is going up, and this is going down, and this is going forward. We don't like that. Nobody likes it. Okay? So we have to work against these forces. We have these 2 vectors on the lower arch. One vector that tries to extrude the molars, one vector that try to bring the incisor forward and down. So what is going to happen when you use this is going to happen something like that. Inclination of the occlusal plane. When you have inclination of the occlusal plane and exclusion of the molar, you have a rotation of the mandible. In a class 2 is the worst thing that can happen because the point P is going down. We don't like it. Nobody likes it. No orthodontists like that. So we have to do something to counteract these red vectors. So how do we do it? First of all, something that we use almost always is a lip bumper. And that helps us. By the way, you know that you have done a lot of tweed in the first year. So you know that everything that the Merrifield Kranz technique does in order to prepare the anchorage, in order to avoid this type of forces. In 1984, 86, in between, there was a journal of the Tweed Foundation, International Journal of the Tweed Foundation. I don't know, I don't think it's published anymore. But at that time, there was a guy by the name of Lyle Johnston that compared the anchorage produced by anchorage preparation and the anchorage produced by lip bumper. And he published the paper on the Tweed journal. And they found out that if you put the lip bumper for 3 months before using class 2 elastics, or if you produce anchorage preparation, you have the same type of anchorage. Okay? So, you can choose, you do whatever you like. But please do me a favor. If when you are going to the Tweed Foundation, when are you going?
We haven't planned.
Nobody's, Giovanni is not taking anybody to the Tweed Foundation?
In June.
In June. So do me a favor. Who's going there? You two? Only you two?
We never heard about this.
Okay. Do me a favor. That is something that I really would like you to do. Check 84, 86, because they have the journal, International Journal of the Tweed Foundation. And look for a paper of Lyle Johnston. And please make a copy because I want it. I couldn't find it. Okay? Now, let's divide these two vectors.
But, sorry, the lip bumper 3 months before.
Yeah.
And then we...
And then you keep the lip bumper on.
Ah, wait, okay.
And then you keep the lip bumper on. No.
Okay.
Is it removable?
What?
Patient remove the bumper or you use it always?
It depends where you work. When I work, I ligate the lip bumper.
Mm.
When you work, they are very good. You can let them take it out.
Mm.
No, I'm just kidding. The lip bumper is a removable appliance.
Yeah, I know. How?
But the patient doesn't know.
So you use it for 24 hours?
It depends. Depends of the, I would like to open a parenthesis here.
What is
Because this is a very good question. He said, do you put the lip bumper and you ligate and you keep it fixed, or you allow the patient to take it out? Now, the most important thing that you have to develop as a professional, as a specialist, as an orthodontist, is the feeling of what the patient can give you. And that is something that is very difficult. It comes from experience, comes from your empathy with the patient, but you really have to understand if a patient can give you something or a patient cannot give you something. Not easy, but there are patients where I definitely ligate the lip bumper. There are patients that I say, it's coming out, put it in, coming out, you just take it out to eat and to brush, and then you put it back. Again, you have to go from point A to point B. You know what is the direction. Then you have to adapt to the circumstances. Then there are a lot of variables. One of the variables that we have is cooperation. is probably the higher variable, and we cannot control it. So it's up to you to understand if cooperation, compliance of the patient is a big problem, and you have to. It's up to you. It's definitely up to you, because it is my personal feeling that the personal relationship that you have with the patient helps a lot in compliance. So that you have to get the patient in your side. You have to be, the patient should feel that it's a team. You, him, and all the office, and the father and the mother are working together to get to a result. And sometimes doesn't happen, so it's difficult. But this is something that you cannot say before. You cannot anticipate. So it's up to you. So there are something that I don't do in some patients. There are something that I do in some other patients. And it's difficult to explain. And that is the reason why you are here. And that is the reason why you have to treat patient under supervision. Now, again, when you put an elastic, you have this vector, and this vector create, again, an arm. And guess what? The arm is creating a moment. You know that before. You know that before. So, for me, again, I don't understand how can you put a straight wire here when you know that there's something like that is going to happen. So, in medicine, we say that prevention is better than the cure. So, let's prevent something that we don't like. The way we do is pretty simple. Toeing. What is the toeing doing? Again, it's creating a couple of force that is working again against the moment. And there is this type of situation that we don't like either. As I said, there is one vector this way, one vector this way. And what we do is we put torque on the wire. What type of torque are we using? Lingual crown torque. Lingual crown torque is working against the teeth to come forward. So we put something that put the teeth this way. And then, when you insert this lingual crown torque, you see that the wire goes up. You want to see the wire going up. When you try the lingual crown torque.
Lingual crown torque is negative.
Okay, you put lingual crown torque. So you take and you put it this way. When you put on the incisor, the wire goes up. Okay? If you are not sure, you check it. Okay? It's like that. You go in the incisor. And it's very important, again, that is a super tempered wire, super gold, very strong, because when you put this, you have to be sure that when you insert this, you don't take any torque away.
How many
So the
degrees
torque should
will
remain in the wire. Okay? Okayness? Right. We do something else. We insert an upright spring on the fifth, on the second premolar. What is an upright spring doing? Is create a couple on the 5. You have done with Giovanni a lot of tweets. You know what is this? Nothing else than an anchor band. The only difference is that it's reversible. You can take it out. But it's doing exactly what it's doing. When you make an anchor band, what do? You solidarize a tooth to the arch. And that is exactly what you're doing, because you create a huge amount of resistance to sliding. When you have this force, the problem is that 1, 2, 3, they are really not in too much in anchorage because the wire can slip. Okay? So if you increase the resistance to sliding, you are somehow consolidating two things together. And then you have this type of force that we don't like either. So what we do, again, we create another moment, another couple. What we do, reverse curve of spare. So what we're trying to do is to consolidate all the arch and try to work very hard in order to counteract all the vectors that we don't like. And this is the lady that you already seen. And what is important is that in a class 2, in adult, with a distalization, we were able to go from 103 to 98, and this is control of the lower incisor. How? Filling the slot, putting the torque, and using all things we can use in order to counteract the vectors that we don't like. And if you see the occlusal plane is almost stable, let's say acceptable. We had probably 1 degree of inclination, which is pretty good. In an adult case, class 2, treated for more than 2.5 years. So, try to remember this. You do 2 important concepts. First of all, prevent. Everything that is, you know that is going to happen, you prevent. Number 2, fill the slot. If you fill the slot, I'm not telling you that filling the slot, you are solving all the problem. You're not solving anything. But if you fill the slot, you can control better. And then you can act. You see that you're losing torque, you stop, you add torque. You're losing anchorage, you stop, you're adding anchorage. You have always to have your reference point and to have your case under control. So that is the main concept is that if you do this, sorry. If you fill the slot, it's different, it's difficult that there is this type of situation where you don't control. No, we want to control. We want to control. The most difficult thing to do in class 2 is control the lower incisor, control the upper incisor torque. We want to control it. We want to control the incisor, we want to control the upper incisor torque, we want to control the occlusal plane. That is exactly what you have to control. If you don't control that, you allow the extrusion of the molar, you allow the occlusal plane to open, you are always running toward class, to try to solve class 2, and the class 2 is always increasing.
So you use 18 by 22 or?
Here?
I mean, yeah, wire.
I know. We use
17.
an 18 by 22 and an 18 by 25.
Really?
Yeah.
In 18.
Yes, I don't get it.
In 18 slot you use 18 by 25?
If you use 18, you know, the wire is 18 by 22, and the bracket is 18 by 25.
I thought it's 17 by 22, the last one, no?
No, it's 18 by 22.
Ah, okay.
Why
Maybe-
not 25?
What?
Why not 25?
You can use it.
Okay.
The reason why we prefer 1822 is to maintain only not too many wires. I remember when we have to control torque in the back.
Yes.
So if you have an
How to
18 by
make the
22,
how to make the rotation.
1822,
Yes,
you
yes,
turn
yes,
90
yes,
degrees,
yes,
become
yes.
22 by 18,
Yes,
and you
yes,
can
yes.
insert and you fill the
Yes,
slot.
yes,
If
yes.
you have 1825,
No, don't enter, yes, it's correct.
but you can do it if you want. Actually,
Yes, yes.
sometimes I use 18 by 25,
Okay.
but you know, if you want just to buy one wire, you go 18 by 20.
Okay. Sorry, what's another things? And in your class 2 elastic, how much force you want?
Okay, that is a good question. And that is another thing that is, for me, I get irritated when I have this question because I don't know how to answer. No, I tell you why. What we do, we calculate 150.
You calculate
150 with the,
distance.
yeah. The problem is that after few minutes, hours, you don't know what you have. Now there are, there is a paper or two papers. Some elastic are better than others. Still, we try to have 100 grams at least.
100.
Yeah. So we get 150, hoping that you get 200 grams.
Okay.
And don't forget, we are using 150 grams to retract the canines and 300 grams to retract the incisors.
What will be? 300 grams to retract the inside.
Yes. Okay. So that is to tell you that we are not relying on class 2 elastics. Class 2 elastics is only to keep there.
Yes, yes, yes,
We
yes.
set everything. The anchorage is not only on the elastics, okay?
Yes.
But is on the elastic too.
So, when you calculate the force to retract the incisor, you want a closed chain that go from the six to the hook who make 300 grams, or you add to the elastic?
No. There is we usually use a 9-tie wire closed chain that is developed, that has something that is called memory of form,
Yes.
which means that you have different type of activation is maintaining the same force.
Yes.
And we use this 150 for the canine that goes from the first molar to the canine in order to retract the canine or the premolar. And then we go from the molar to the hook on the wire, 300 grams.
Okay, only that. So
Now-
the elastics and other things. Okay.
300 grams seems to be a very huge force. And it is a huge force. We don't have a lot of problem out of this huge force. Why? Now, there is a concept that I'd like you to have. The force is not what you apply. The force is what every single surface of the periodontal ligament is feeling. So if you are good enough not to have a rotation movement, but almost a body movement, the force is distributed to all the periodontal ligament. Number two, using a frictional system, part of the force is absorbed to overtake the friction. So don't be afraid with this huge amount of force that we are using, because we are using a force, a frictional force, so part of the force goes to friction, and we are using a system that is very close to distribute the force to all the periodontal ligament.
Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah.
300 grams every side.
Yeah.
300 grams the X
Yeah,
to the right,
Right.
and 300
Exactly.
to the left.
Exactly. So I tell you, very easy to remember the force used in bidimensional technique. If you distalize, use 100 grams. If you retract the canine, use 150. If you retract the incisor, use 300. Very difficult.
Can you repeat?
Sorry, the retraction of the incisor?
300.
And
No.
distalize
On this side, 100.
To distalize 100 grams. To
Okay,
retract the canine, 150. To retract the incisor, 300. So in other words, if you check, more or less, when you retract, you always have 150 per tooth. Canine by itself, 150, 300 for the incisor, is 300 one side, 300 the other side, 600 is for teeth. You divide 150.
Is it always closed in spring or?
Huh?
Is it always closed in spring or?
If you retract the canine or retract the incisor, closed. If you if you decide the
No,
moment
I
is
mean,
open.
never elastic chain, always.
Or if you want, okay. Okay.
No, just.
This is a very good question. Ines asked me, you always use a closed coil or you can use also an elastic chain. I'll be a liar if I tell you that I never use elastic chain. I do use elastic chain sometimes. But the reason why the system is with the coil is because Dr. Gianelli wanted something that was reproducible. If you use an elastic chain, you don't know how much force to use. Good. Elastic chain is, you stretch the elastic chain, and then you don't know what is going to, the real force that you have there, you don't know it. Because at the beginning you have a force, after 6 hours you have another force. Okay? So, what he wants to have was a system that is reproducible by everybody. I told you yesterday, no, 2 days ago, this is a system that is made by a chairman of the department. So he has to transmit to each single student a system that is reproducible and is controlled. So you have a controlled and reproducible system with reference point that everybody can see. So after 1 month that you are in the department, you know what are the reference point, you know what are the force, you know what are the band that you have to do. And you see the patient, and was me, was my senior partner in the second year, or my junior partner. We had the same evaluation of the case, and we see exactly the same reference point, and we see exactly the same thing. Okay? So everything should be reproducible, and that is something that I really like. So I really would like to transmit to you something that is reproducible, something that whatever you do, you go to bed and you sleep. You don't think about the case. Because you know that you have a reference point, you know that in 3-4 weeks you can, if you make a mistake, you can go back.
Sorry.
Yep.
100 grams to
Very
distalize
good.
the first molar.
I'm looking for 3.
But only 100.
In Italy.
Yeah. When we do this first molar distalization, we were doing this first molar distalization. Now, 1,000 of way of distalizing molar, okay? When we were at the department, we were using a nest bottom on the first premolar, anchored on the first premolar, and a wire that was going to the molar. And we were using 100 grams. And when we were using ACCO, we were calculating 100 grams too. When we were using, I was using a distal jet. The distal jet is more grams, but it was because the distal jet has a telescopic system, so it was a different ball. If you do something, if you distalize something on the wire, 100 grams is the force that is enough to distalize, but the lowest force enough to distalize, to work. So we want to work there.
Okay.
Because we were using with the, we were experimenting different forces, okay? And the idea was to utilize the lowest force that is moving the molar, because the lowest force needs less anchorage control. Okay?
And for the canine, 150.
Yeah. You don't like it?
Everything you say.
Now, now let's go for one of the most difficult things to do in orthodontics, that's called molar protraction. Now,
Molar protraction.
yeah. I want to introduce a concept. I know that we are in 2018, and I do know that exists mini screws. You know, the mini screws in the 90s were developed by a guy by the name of Crickmore that published a paper in the early 90s. And then they were becoming very, very popular with a paper that Birte Mersen, Mirko Raffaini, and Antonio Costa was publishing the JCO. So, Mirko Raffaini is one of my best friends. Antonio Costa I knew pretty well. And then Aldo Carano came out with this stuff. And I like to recognize Aldo, because Aldo passed away before his 42nd birthday. And he was a very good friend of mine, and he was a genius. He's the one that developed the distal jet, he's the one that developed the mask screw, he's the one that really was into mini screws a lot. So, I want you to know that I do use mini screws. I know how to use mini screws. I am probably in Italy the person that published more paper on mini screws than research on mini screws than probably anybody else. And so don't tell me about mini screws because I know what you're talking about, okay? Now, I know that one of the best ways of closing spaces is using mini screws. And we experimented many ways of doing mini screws. And I tell you something, if you want to protract molars, using mini screws is not easy. Because in order to go for the best place where you find a lot of bone is probably here or there. But that is the worst place for biomechanical speaking. Because if you put a mini screw here, you have to do an indirect system to protract the molar. The best place is here, but there is no bone at all. Only I did put these two screws in only because she was a student and she could not say anything. But we wanted to try. We wanted to try. And I can tell you something, that the best mini screws is bicortical. And I can tell you these two were bicortical because I could feel here and there the point. So don't do it unless it's one of your students before the examination test, okay? So, but this is the best place to put a screw from the biomechanical point of view.
Carrière?
Hmm?
Aveva i carrière?
What?
Aveva i carrière come attacco?
Non ho capito.
Aveva i carrière come branchi?
No, no.
Por favore.
No, stava. No,
He's talking about, sorry. He's talking about the type of bracket we were using. And he said that they were carrière. No, they are not carrière.
it seems strange to me.
These ones are, they should be time 2.
Thank you.
They should be time 2.
I'm sure.
I don't know. It's not really important, by the way.
For Matteo, sì.
Why?
Huh?
Why are you into brackets a lot?
No, but it seems strange that you use a carrière system.
Luis is a very good friend of mine. Luis Carriere. So when he had the prototype, he showed me the prototype. And the difference between this and Carriere is that the one that I use in the size, when I use self-ligating bracket, I like to use active bracket on the size.
Indeed.
Carriere is
That's
a
totally
passive.
passive, yes, indeed.
So that is what you can do, and that is okay. We know how to do it. Oh, if you protract a molar, and there is a second molar, that is a clinical tip. If you protract the molar, like in this case, don't put the wire to the second molar. Don't put the wire on the second molar, because usually the second molar is coming by itself. Like in this case, you see, I put the braces, but there is no wire, you see? Then, when you close the space, you can insert the wire and control the second molar. But don't do it at the beginning, because you protract the molar and the second molar comes by itself. So, you can do something, even something like that. Asymmetric protraction. And as I said, this is the best place to put a meniscus. There is a lot of bone there. But you have to work indirect. You cannot work direct to that.
Why?
Because if you put anything, a screw, an elastic chain from here to there, the molar goes. Okay.
And also if you make a,
Yeah, you can do everything, but you can do it. Of course, you can make a bend, but for me, it's a little bit too close. If you want to do it, do it. In this case, we did first direct, then indirect.
No, come back.
In quanto tempo?
The second is direct,
Yeah, beginning with just want to bring this.
but in the third you have.
No, this
wire.
is indirect. This is indirect. We were ligating the screw here in order to maintain the anchorage, and then. Okay.
I ligate the
how many times we need to make it?
Hmm?
How many times? we need? How many times we need to protract?
How many times?
How many
How many
How long?
times we need to
What time
protract
takes
to
protraction?
protraction?
How many time?
Time,
Yes,
time,
yes.
time.
How much?
How much time?
How much?
I don't know. Usually, if you are lucky, the tooth moves. You know that they have done a lot of work on tooth movement on dogs, and that is a group from the University of Nijmegen. If you want to check that, is Dr. Malta, Maltha. And what they found is that there are fast movers and slow movers. So it's very difficult to tell you what is the time, because the time is, the fast mover is fastest, the slow mover is slower. But the mean is more or less 1 millimeter per month.
Okay.
So if you are a slow mover, can be 0.6, 0.8. If you are a fast mover, can be 1.2.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
that is difficult for me to say, because between 0.6 to 1.2 is double. Exactly double. So a slow mover can go 12 months for 6 millimeter, while a fast mover can go 6 millimeter, 1.2, 5 months. And it's double.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay? So, and that is something that, is another question that annoys me. When a patient say, how long did it take? And you usually say, okay, 2 to 2.5 years. It depends on the class 2, quite complicated. But we really don't know. And give the information that we don't know, I don't like. There are too many variables. I always tell at least there are 3 variables I'm playing with. my biomechanics, and let's say that that is pretty good. Then is your reaction to my biomechanics, which is slow mover, fast movers, and your cooperation. So I don't control two of those variables. It's difficult to say. So it's not that I don't want to say, it's difficult. I like to be precise. I like to tell people what I'm sure of, but I'm not sure of. You know, if you check the literature, all class 2 more or less cases goes around 28, 30 months. So if you want to be on the safe side, you say, okay, fine, it's 2.5 years. Then you get the standard deviation on the other side, it takes 3.5 years. And the disk is bothering you every single day for the year that is longer. On the other side, you go to the third standard deviation on the right side, and you finish in less than 2 years. And the guy who's watching you say, you want to steal money out of me. It's difficult. I don't like to say something like that. But everybody's asking. Go ahead.
More things. You made the protraction on the 1822.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I want to insert a concept now, and I want you to be very clear about this concept. For me, it is very important. Any type of bracket you use, I don't care. Use the vertical slot. Why? Because the vertical slot allows you to be very elastic, let's put it this way. You know, if you use the vertical slot, you can easily tell the patient where to put the elastics if you want to do it. And they cannot make mistakes because you don't have anything in any other tooth. So if you want to use strange class elastic, class 2, class 3s, they don't make mistake. Okay? Because they cannot make mistake because the only way to put elastics is in that place where you put the tip in, like in this case, or in this case. If you have a vertical elastics, a vertical slot, you can easily get close to the center of resistance when you put like a mini screws.
The power arm.
So you use a power arm, and you get very close to the center of resistance. Otherwise, you have to work a system to avoid the moment. If you go here, you still have a moment, but less. And then the most important thing for me. You know, I know that happens only to me. I know that to you never happened and will never happen. But sometimes what happens is that a bracket gets detached and a tooth goes back or goes forward or whatever. So what you have to do, if you don't have a vertical slot, you have to take out the wire and go to a wire that is smaller in order to get into this bracket. If you have a vertical slot, you don't change the wire at all. You put a ligature on the vertical slot, and every single time the guy is coming, you activate the ligature until the tooth is in a wire again. So you can keep the same mechanic that you're doing, the same exact mechanic, without going down in the wire, and you get the tooth anyhow. Another, for me, very important way, I don't have any problem anymore when I have a surgical patient. Because for me, a surgical patient is not 1 hour or half an hour in order to put all the, or solder, all the, I just put a power pin on each tooth. And the surgeon are very happy because they can use what they want. And, you know, and also, I have to tell you something. I'm not so good. And sometimes it happens quite late in the night, so I not solder the hook. I always put this type of hook that is called, they are called surgical hook. So you have to put those right in the middle. And it's happened to me. Once in a while I made a mistake. And I put the wire back, it doesn't fit because I didn't put the right position. And beside the fact that I go to purgatory from what I'm thinking, and you didn't get it, okay. Okay, forget it. Now, beside the fact that I get very upset, the second is I have to do a new wire, and I waste a lot of time. In this case, it's very easy. Toom, 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 toom. 5 minutes is ready for surgery. And I don't even take out the wire. Now, Gianelli said once, I don't understand why you wouldn't want a vertical slot in your bracket. Whatever bracket you choose is free. So, it doesn't matter what type of technique you are using. It does not matter. It's something that can help you a lot. Personal opinion. But I tell you, for me it's very difficult when sometimes I get some patient, transfer patient with no vertical slot, and it's very close to the end, because when I get the transfer patient that is not close to the end, I take out of the bracket, I rebond completely, I have to tell you. Do it, because it seems that you are wasting time, you are gaining time. Because somebody else is doing something different from you, you're different, I want to work with my system. I'm used to my system, I don't want to do anything with it. But when you are very close to the end, you tend to maintain the system that is there. Maybe it's at 3 months from the end. And when you are used to have vertical slots that you can put some vertical elastic, something like that, and you don't have it, is difficult. Believe me, it's difficult. Then, go ahead. Matteo, you are very active today.
Yes. And speaking about force, how much force you want for the molar protraction?
What is the relation with the
No,
force?
I remember before, but you don't say the force to the protraction. It's wrong.
You are following your own. Where are you now?
quello spazio lì fra
He's checking
25 e
everything.
27.
Scala.
We're gonna sit down. Believe me.
Okay.
Non mi interessa.
Matteo, if you were not there, I would invent you.
Thank you very much.
Now, but the most important part of the vertical slot is that we have something that is reversible, that we can use. In other words, if you have vertical slot, you have the opportunity to selectively increase or reduce the anchorage of a tooth. So in other words, if you have a vertical slot, you are increasing the resistance to sliding of a tooth. If you increase the resistance to sliding of a tooth, you are consolidating the tooth to the wire. So you are anchoring the tooth. In other words, a vertical slot in a edgewise system, when you put an uprighting spring in a vertical slot in an edgewise bracket, you are not uprighting anything. The name of the uprighting spring comes from back. And they call it uprighting spring, okay? But
So
you,
it doesn't upright.
how can you upright something that has a twin bracket?
Yes.
It doesn't upright anything. The only thing that it does is forcing these corners against the wire. If you force the corner against the wire, you are increasing the resistance to sliding. If you increase the resistance to sliding, you are anchoring the tooth. Is that clear? So you are consolidating the tooth to the wire. So you are anchoring the wire to the tooth.
But why don't just
Huh?
why don't just use I don't know, liquid?
Inessa, I love you, but you have to speak louder because I'm older than
Why don't make stops, or I don't know, use composite, liquid composite, and you consolidate the tooth with the wire? No,
Because it's not reversible.
no, but liquid composite you can take easily out. So
So you put the composite between the wire and the bracket,
Yeah.
and
You
you
just-
that's okay. It's fine.
Is it work?
It's
the
a little
same?
bit dirty, in my opinion.
No, yeah, but,
but-
will it work the same? Or?
Yeah, it might work the same. I don't know. I never use it. I never use it. But in this way, you have something that is very easy to put and to take it out.
Yeah.
So, you see the patient, you don't need the anchorage anymore, you take it out. If you don't need that anchorage anymore, what do you do when you put the composite?
You just hit with pliers. You can take
You
it.
take it out,
easily.
and then
yeah.
you polish the brackets.
No, if it's liquid, liquid composite, it's easy. You just took
Flow.
it and then flowable composite.
I don't know, I never use it.
So it's easily goes out, and you don't have
Inessa,
to polish
do
anything.
Do me a favor. Next time, or if you have with you,
No,
let me see.
Okay,
I'll
but
be
I
more
don't
than
have
happy to
with
see
me.
that.
Okay.
Yep, Matteo, go.
We start to use an uprighting spring in every wire 18 by 22.
Yeah, the riding spring you have to have a very heavy, strong wire, okay? Now, what is the uprighting spring? What is an uprighting spring? It's like a brake. It's the same concept of a brake. You know, you increase the resistance to sliding. If you have a brake, you increase the resistance to sliding. It's exactly the same thing. You have a brake that you can use in your treatment. And you can use more than one if you want to. So in this case, I would like to protract premolars and molars, and I use the uprighting springs on the first and second, on the canine and the first premolar. Canine and first premolar. The only thing you have to pay attention to when you use the uprighting springs is where is this going? Because if you see, one is here and one is here. Because if the one is here, it acts as a stop. So the hook, the activation should be very close to the tooth that doesn't move, because you have to allow this tooth to move. Okay? So when you use the uprighting springs as an anchorage in front, you make sure that you don't put this close to the tooth that has to be moved, that has to move. Otherwise you create a stop there. You see, and you can easily advance. Beginning, hand, now, down. When you choose something like that, it can be everything. It can be that these were going forward, it can be that these were going back. You
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
But since at the beginning, you don't know, but I knew it. At the beginning, I had the class 1 on the canine area, and I finish up like that. I know that the back was coming forward, because the canine class 1 was maintained. One tip, clinical tip out of this picture. Now, I did so many years ago. And I was always working behind the patient. okay? Patient was here, I was working at 12 hours, okay? Which is good, because it's the best way of working. When you finish, you cannot stay in that position. When you finish a case, you turn around and see the patient in front. If I had done something like that, this would not have happened. Okay? From the back, you don't see that there is this small difference. And then when you take a picture and you see that, you get annoyed. I say, yeah, I should have seen it. I should have seen it. That is, I didn't brag in the right way. Okay? So make sure that when you finish a case before the bonding, you watch the patient in front, not on the, because you are busy, you work, there's another patient, you are in the back, you do, and then you go. No. Turn around, before you deband, watch the patient in front to make him smile. Now, what we can do, and this is not my case, this is the only case that is not mine in this presentation. And I'm very happy to present, because this case is Dr. Gianelli. I tell you a story. I invited him to give a presentation while I was working in the University of Ferrara, and he had a problem with the computer. So he said, Mauro, can I use your computer? I didn't watch the computer, I don't know. No, I said, okay, fine, Dr. G, no problem at all. And what happened was that he gave me all the stuff, and he had 1 day lecture. So I had one complete day lecture of Dr. Gianelli. So, and I completely forgot. And once I was going to give a lecture, I think in Poland, somewhere like that. And I couldn't find a file. So, you know, in the computer is something that you go and you ask for, say, bidimensional.
Finder.
Yeah, Finder, bidimensional. And I had all this stuff from Dr. Gianelli. I said, oh my God. I said, and I gave the lecture, I came back, I called Dr. G, I said, Dr. G, I'm sorry, I have all your stuff, I have one, I forgot, and I apologize, I'm gonna cancel everything. And he said, Mauro, are you crazy? You cancel? You keep it, it's yours, keep it. I don't want you to cancel anything. And I can't. So I have 1 day, all day lecture of Dr. G with me. And this is one of his cases. And that is the one that he was describing the way, more protraction can be done. And you see, this is difficult because asymmetric. The most difficult thing in orthodontics are asymmetries. And you see that this is in class 1 almost.
Sorry, there is the wire from the 4 to the 6.
So
There is what?
There is the wire.
Yes.
Okay, I don't
What?
see. If there is the wire between 4 and the 6 in the first model.
Sure.
There is. I don't see it. Okay.
Now, this is the system. Upright springs, 300 grams.
300.
Yep.
Now we get cut.
And that is the protraction.
How did you manage?
Check the midline. So-
The closure of the bite, how did you manage?
No, I don't know. I didn't manage at all. But I think there was a prematurity here that when you get to class 1 is gone. That is my guess. But you know, that my guess is that if you are edge to edge. So, you know, Casper Clemente, then you go in class 1 and everything goes.
Sorry,
Now,
the chain is bonded to
No.
The
I
chain
know, I
is-
got from package of
pay attention. This is something that we are going to do, and you have to do.
This I take from home.
9 tie, you cannot stretch all the way because otherwise they die. So there is a amount of 3, 4, 5 millimeter. Then if you stretch, they maintain the same, exactly the same force. If you go over, you kill them.
It's like a muscle.
Exactly. So what you do, you stretch, and then you can see here there is a ligature that goes to the hook.
Okay.
So what you do, you put the ligature in the hole, and then you take the ligature to the hook in order to not stretch too much.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. And then he controlled the distalization of the canine with of the anterior group with torque and with uprighting.
Matteo, I'm going to describe these mechanics
Okay.
step by step.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, this is the mechanic we are doing, right?
Okay.
So you have the center of resistance of the tooth here. You're applying a force here. Okay? So you have a arm. Okay? So what is going to happen when you have an arm, Matteo? A moment. And a moment is like that, right? So this tooth is going like that. So what you do when you have a moment,
Counteract.
you make
a band.
you want a couple that
A couple,
counteract
yes.
the moment. Is that correct? So what you do, you make this reverse curve spin
Reverse.
that you insert in order to create a couple. Is that clear?
Okay.
Perfetto.
Fine to
No,
everybody?
no.
Vedi?
Tell me when I can go on, okay?
You can.
Smile.
Matteo is still there. Okay. Now, this is on this plane of the space. Let's see on the crucial plane what happened. Exactly the same. We have center of resistance, we apply a force, we create a moment.
Sono bellissime queste animazioni, si possono avere?
Pagando.
Guarda.
Non è un problema.
May I give my laptop to you?
What?
Facciamo in...
May I give my laptop to you?
Dollari maltesi.
No,
Dollari maltesi.
di cibo.
Okay. No, it's not a problem. I tell you something. I don't really know if I can give you because this has been paid by a company and give it to me to give. I don't care. I give it to you anyhow.
Bravo.
Don't use it for
Don't tell everybody.
We will never use for our lecture.
No, really, that is no. That I got in trouble.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna give you, but don't make it public,
È
please.
normale.
Absolutely.
Ovvio.
Now,
su Facebook.
what are we gonna do?
Sorry, we are stupid.
For some reason, I don't trust you. Okay. Now, what are we gonna do? No, but this is something that you don't even know how much work there is behind this. How much I work with the technician that they were doing. I just, months and months of work. But I'm gonna give you. Now, this is something that is you can do. You make a toe in order to create a couple that is against the moment, okay? Is that clear? Every single time you have a moment that is against what you like, you have to create something to counteract the moment. And the only way of doing it is create a couple. Again. Now, this is very important. Okay? This is very important. Try to remember this. Because when you use a such huge amount of force, because we are using 300 grams, and the force is not going this way, it's going straight to the point. Okay? What it's trying to do, this force is trying to collapse the arch. Okay? So what you do, you try to, you don't try, you make the wire wider in this area here. So you don't put the wire exactly where it should be, but you go wider. How much? 1-2 millimeters. No,
One? 2
1
millimeters.
or 2
1 or
millimeters?
2?
Una più
2 millimeters.
sparso.
2 millimeters.
Okay.
2, okay.
No, Matteo. What you have to understand is that there is no way that you scientifically can define the amount of
have an idea.
activation that you can give. So in other words, you give an activation, you check next month, and if the activation is okay, okay. If it's not okay, you increase.
Yes,
If
yes,
it's too
yes.
much, you go back.
It's okay.
I'm just a very young student, but would it be
No,
crazy?
you're not very young.
No, and would it be crazy to use a lingual arch from 4 to 4 as anchorage?
No.
Just for a bed.
Sorry? No, because collapse and as well you risk a retraction of the 4.
No, you can use it.
But
You can use it.
I'm not sure it prevents retraction. Hey.
You can use it if you wanna do something that is you have to do it and you keep it and then you take it out when you are finished. You can use it.
Yeah,
And the other, okay.
Okay.
Questo pezzo proprio mancava. The other side.
Again,
time.
Tight.
again. Let's see.
To bend back.
Let's see what is going to happen. Now, let's divide the vector of this force. You have a vector that is what we want, is taking the molar forward. And there is a vector that we don't like, that is taking this tip back. Now, we know that before. So we want to somehow counteract this vector. Let's see what is this vector. Let's compose this vector in 2 other vectors, okay? So we have one vector that is trying to take the wire out, it's trying to make the wire moving this way. And there's one vector that is trying to collapse the arch. Now let's discuss about this.
What?
Let's discuss on one vector each.
Okay.
Okay? Now, this one is trying to take the wire away.
Okay.
The first thing that you do is send the wire back.
Switch back.
Okay? If you are more sophisticated, you make an omega and you ligate it to the omega. I'm not sophisticated, I switch the wire back. I cinch the wire back. But I know is a rude way of doing it. The very good, sophisticated people make an omega there. Now, if you cinch this back, what you are doing, you are anchoring these 4 teeth. Why? Because this tooth try to go forward due to this vector, okay? But in order these two to go forward, this has to go forward because it's attached here with a contact point. And this has to go forward because there's a contact point here. And this has to go forward because there's a contact point here. So these four teeth are in anchorage. If you cinch back or if you put an omega and you ligate. Then we have to counteract this vector. How do we do it? Any guess?
You bend the wire.
With the torque in anterior.
We put a torque in the front. So, what we are, I made a big mistake. I gave you the bidimensional book. Everything is written there. No, Claudia, I'm just kidding. I know that you were thinking about it. What you're doing, you insert the wire in the bracket. And what you do, again, you insert the wire in the brackets, and the wire is filling the slot. In this way, you create, again, a moment that is bringing the lower incisor forward. Okay?
The torque is
It's-
lingual crown.
No,
Stigma.
it's buccal crown torque.
Buccal crown.
Now,
Positive.
now, okay? I want you to remember that when you insert this torque in, the wire goes down. Now, when we have to counteract class 2 elastics, we give lingual crown torque. And the wire goes up. When we have to counteract molar protraction forces, we do buccal crown torque. And the wire goes down. So that is the reason why the brackets of bidimensional technique on incisor are 0, standard brackets. Okay, because we like to play with the wire, not with the brackets. There's no prescription on these brackets here. Okay? Is that clear? No prescription.
Okay.
Why there is no prescription? Because when we protract the molar, we give buccal crown torque. When we use class 2 axis, we give lingual crown torque. So we play with the wire. You cannot put that in the prescription because you don't know what you're doing. Now, going back, we already cinched back and we put 1, 2, 3, 4 tooth in anchorage.
Wait.
Then we put the torque on the incisors and we put other 4 teeth in anchorage.
And then upright and springs.
And then upright spring.
So
And we put also these tooth in anchorage. So what is going to happen is that you have
No, indietro no.
is the old concept of metaphor. We are playing 9 teeth against 1. And if you play 9 teeth against 1, it's very possible that the tooth that is not in anchorage moves and the other thing doesn't move, don't move. If you want to be even more safe, you put an upright spring in this one as I did in the other case, you remember? So you play 10 against 1. Huh?
Come back, please.
First,
Aspetta.
One more? No? Again. No? Forward. il telecomando.
What means command?
Te l'avevo detto di
A po'?
Comunque io non ci volevo via sto master.
Ne avete voluto a vita
Okay, let's try to be concentrated. Come on. I know that it's difficult with the money, but now we are able to put 9 tooth against 1. And as I said, 9 teeth against 1 is very possible that the only force that will be expressed is this one. Like in this case. This is a classical case where I made a mistake. I made a big mistake. I extract the first, I should have extracted the second.
Oh.
Sometimes it happens. I made a mistake, period. So when I finish up, I end up with almost everything online and a big space here. So what I had to do was to protract the molar and the second premolar, and I did it. So the system is exactly what you have seen. You torque and you take out the torque in the back. You make the reverse curve of spay. You put the wire on, and you know that the wire is going down.
What about torque
Si
of
vede proprio che forza.
Auro?
Huh?
What about torque of canines in this system?
Vedi anche il taglio che fa.
You ask me later on. And you see that the wire should go down. Then you put the upright spring. Then you put the chain. And that is what, it always works when you do this. And that is very important that you see something. You need the molar is an asymmetric if you have to close a space. Now, let's see what you have to see. If you are closing an asymmetric space, you're going to see that the molar is more or less at the level of the second premolar on the other side. Okay?
Perfect.
Now, this is the case where I made a mistake. It's quite obvious that I had to extract the second premolar instead of the first one. At this point, I had to protract. And using this system, I was able to protract.
You bend the seven. No.
I bend what?
Second.
You want the second more or no?
Later on.
Later.
Later. And we were able to finish in a classroom. Controlling, of course, the incisors. That is what we want. So we have protracted, but we didn't have moved the lower incisor from where it was, which is what we want. I mean, we maintained. You see, we maintained the midline, and you see that before was like that, now it's like that. And of course, we were controlling the upper torque.
Extraction case.
Now, if you don't mind, if you mind, I don't care. I give you 15 minutes break, because otherwise you don't follow it.
Thank you.